listening to the Betmaker Show. This is the NFL Super Bowl preview for Monday, January 27th, 2020. And now, live from Las Vegas, the host of the Betmaker Show, Brian Blessing.
Always a treat to talk football, talk anything with Bruce Marshall. Brian Blessing, Bruce Marshall. We're in Las Vegas, and we've got a football game with a lot of offerings on the wagering board, and we're going to have some fun with that. Dive into the props a little bit here and get an updated feel on the game. Hi, Bruce. How you doing, bud? We're down to one.
Yeah, about time. Get this thing over with.
Oh, no. We got a week. We got a week, buddy.
I know. It seems like it's going to be about a month of this talk, but yeah, I mean, can't believe it. I mean, the season went by in a snap, and here we are right at the end.
Your thoughts on the number with KC 1? We're seeing a handful of 1.5s out there. The total is 54.5 with some 55s. Just spoke with Jack. The only thing I can see now, 1.5 can be mini volatile, but the way the money's, this is a two-way action kind of game. I do think there may be a late snap on the under here. I could see this total coming down a point and a half at least.
Yeah, I could see something like the LSU Clemson game where right at the end the total dropped. They've bet this total up, Brian, from the outset, because I think this has gone up about 3 points from when they first opened it. So, and I've talked to people around town too who they think it'll get to 55 and maybe above, and then the last 24, 48 hours, it may snap back down. So that's how I kind of see it too. And that's sort of how that Clemson LSU did. That the total was sort of gently going up. And then finally in the last 24 hours, it went down.
I'm not wavering. I mean, I'm still kind of on board with San Francisco in the under. But there have been many Super Bowls where, it's like, okay, it's a game. Whatever. I don't have a real great opinion on it, but the beauty of the props, that inside the game, you can have a real strong opinion on certain aspects of how the game itself will be played and have much more conviction on something along those lines. I generally play in the neighborhood of 12 to 15 of them. I know there are guys go bonkers and, play 40, 50 of them. Good for them, but I mean, I'm picking things I really, in my heart of hearts. Sometimes there's, and I hate value. There's no value is the worst word to me in this game, Bruce. There's no value in ripping up a losing ticket. But how do you treat the props?
I almost feel like I should be reading a public service announcement when I get into the sports book, stop after 12 or 15 of these. Cause I like you, I see people who bet 30, 40, and it's a hard way to watch a game. I mean, it's worse than people who have only bet on props in the game and they're concerned sitting and watching a game with somebody who's bet, all these props. I mean, it's a weird experience. It's worse than fantasy football because all they're looking at is certain stats and things, and they don't really care about how the game is flowing. But people love it. I mean, and most of these books will have more action on the props than they will the actual picks on the game. So it's here to stay, and it keeps getting bigger. So we actually, for the first time this year in the Gold Sheet, we had a little prop corner. We actually recommended 8 of them, I think, this year, because we know that's what people like. So, hey, it's what the market dictates right now. And it's just, the caution is pump the brakes a little bit, or then, like I said, it's very easy to end up with 2-3 dozen of these bets into the game.
Well, okay. I'll say this, and I've had good fortune with this in the past. I'm sitting there, and my strongest opinion in the game of all things, and there are 400 props, is that Daniel Sorensen will go over 5.5 tackles. That is my strongest opinion in this game. He's the kid that made the great special teams tackle on the fake punt in the Houston game. He was the starting safety, lost his job, and then got it back because of injury and has flourished ever since. In the Tennessee game, he had 8 tackles, solo and assisted. In the Houston game, he had 9. One of those tackles was the key play in the game, the fake punt tackle. But the guy played 108 plays in that game. And then the added bonus, Bruce, is that he is their special teams maven. So not only could he go over the 5.5 just by playing defense, and he may be hovering around Kelsey a lot during the game.
Yeah.
He may get a special teams tackle or two of all the things. I'm sitting there going, that's a bad number to me.
Well, yeah, sure. You can find some of these things like that. Yeah. And that sounds like a pretty good one to me. I think I'll even bet that one. So that you can find something like that for sure. It just makes for a funny game watching people cheering for a guy to make tackles. But that's what this is all about.
Well, the first play of the game, Bruce, I'd pick your guy. I don't care. Say San Francisco gets the ball first, and the first carry, and Mostert either he runs into the pile, or he busts it to the outside and he stumbles forward for 4 yards. Either way, the room erupts.
Right. Because
Mostert's first carry is over under 3.5 yards, and this happens all game long. Yeah,
it's almost like P.T. Barnum is there's his example watching with these games. But yeah, I mean, listen, I've heard people try to tout the coin flip, and it's not that people can bet this stuff, but I mean, there's people who tout some of this stuff that is effectively a coin flip. Yeah, and including the coin flip. I've heard this. There's a strategy for
tails. It's tails. It's been
yeah. So there you go.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Other individuals in the game, Bruce, in terms of who the key guys are. And the one thing I would just say to you, and if you wanted to follow up on this, and I think it's a pretty simplistic concept, but maybe as you watch a game, the one thing I would say is which sounds contradictory, but it's fact, is that the majority of players that go over the total on individual props are actually guys that are on the losing side.
Yes, that happens a lot. It happens a lot with them chasing the game on the offensive side. Yeah, that can happen for sure. I think leading up to the game, the one development I would want, the most important guy is one who might not play, and that's Tevin Coleman. If he's not in there, this changes all of Mostert's stats and his props, which are a lot of them out there, and he's a featured guy. But it seems like Coleman's probably not going to play, but they haven't ruled him out yet. But if he did play, that changes the whole sequence of and for the Niners, who gets the ball. And Mostert's not going to have a game like he had against Green Bay if he's going to have to lose some carries to Coleman. And that's how the Niners normally did it, though. So if Coleman's healthy, he's in there a lot and he's splitting carries. So that's the one development early, which is why I watch a little bit on the Mostert props, just because you want to make sure if Coleman's going to play or not.
Well, to that end, because of the gray area, conceivably, I mean, and I know the players are kind of in the same boat, but the books could actually get sided here, because if Coleman doesn't go, Reid is going to, maybe put up some nice numbers. So not only you don't know what to do, with Mostert, but because of Coleman, if you're of the belief he's not playing, Breida, you got to figure, is going to pick up, whatever, 10 to 15 touches in the game, and he's a guy that's been out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, you're right. And I'm looking at some of these. The thought seems to be that they'll go mostly, if Coleman doesn't play, Mostert gets the bulk of the work, like the Green Bay game. But things change. Breida had a little fumble problem late in the season. But, yeah, I mean, that would affect his numbers. I am seeing at some of these around town, they've got a spot on this prop sheets for Coleman, but it's all empty by him because we're not sure he's going to play. So I think, but you're right, it changes Breida's numbers a bit. It changes Mostert's numbers a lot, depending upon Coleman's participation. So that's something I would keep an eye on, because those are going to be running back props are pretty popular props. So that's going to be one to watch this week.
I don't have it. I'll find it eventually. The problem is, Bruce, when there's 400 and you're scouring and searching and searching. But I would tell you, and I would venture a guess, it would be a juicy price. How many times you see a running back, make 4 carries in a row, have a great series, or a big long run, and he gets tripped up at the 2, you run 40 yards and he comes out, right? He catches
sure.
breath. And I'm telling you, the guy that could hit, set your hair ablaze would be the index for the first touchdown. If Mostert did something like that all of a sudden, just because he's tired and Coleman's not playing, Breida, could light up the toe board with the first touchdown of the game.
Well, and Breida, I'm seeing one of the props at one of the places in Vegas. Over his rushing yards are only 15.5. And not only that, any big run that Mostert would have, he'll come out right after that. That's how they do it in football. A little tired. So Breida's very fast. One run for him, he could gain more than 15 yards. That looks like a prop that's kind of interesting, and they are posting that prop right now. And I don't think that even if Coleman played, you'd still see Breida in there a little bit. So 15.5 for him looks like something he might be able to get to.
Well, honestly, our friends at the Superbook, Jay Cornegay and the gang there, do such an unbelievable job. To that end, Breida is not even listed to score the first touchdown of the game. Coleman is at 16-1, which in and of itself tells you he's not playing.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. But so Breida then would be lumped into the field. So you would get basically Breida and all the Chiefs defense at 8-1.
Yeah. So that's something to look at as well. Yeah. The Breida stats, now that I'm props, I'm looking at them a little bit more. 3.5 carries. 15.5 yards. He could be involved in the first touchdown. Will he score a touchdown? That's another prop I'm seeing at a yes and a plus 285, no at a minus 345. That may be the safest. Now that I think about it, Bruce, what you just spit out, that may be one of the safest ones out there. If the word comes down that Coleman is absolutely a no-go, yeah.
Breida over 3.5 carries, please. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
Derrick Henry, gets tired on a long drive, and Deion Lewis would come in and get that Breida over 3.5 carries. Just sit back, and I don't think you got much of an issue there.
No, I don't. I don't either. And even in the now, he only carried once in the Green Bay game, so that's the one. But Mostert was going so hot in that game; they just kept riding him.
Well, my thought on that, just to interrupt you, I apologize. But my thought on that is that Breida probably got virtually no reps during the week because it was Mostert and Coleman. So Coleman gets hurt in that game. Now, believe me, they're going to install, and Breida's going to get a lot of work.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And I don't. Maybe it's just hey, he hasn't played it in a long time. We don't want him to fumble. And yes, Mostert was going good, but now they're going to give this kid a lot of work for 2 weeks on the premise that Coleman's not going to play.
Yeah, and normally for them, they throughout the course of the season, they sort of split this thing 3 ways. By the end, Breida was getting a little bit less. He had 8 carries against Minnesota in the first round. So, normally, it's a 3-headed monster they've got there. Their stats for the season are all pretty similar. So you would think maybe there's going to be some value in here with Breida somewhere. I could see that, sure.
All right, so a lot of time on a guy that is kind of a question mark.
In the world of props, prop world, that's an interesting one, though.
No, there's no doubt about it. Who offensively, Bruce? I got it right in the Chiefs' first game in the divisional round when they played Houston. I like Kelce. He's over 73.5. Well, it was stupidity. He had that by halftime. He had 3 touchdowns. Then the next week you're sitting there going, well, you're sitting there going, well, they're going to spend the whole week, are they not? Vrabel comes from the Belichick tree. He's not going to let Kelce beat him. And then the other guys kind of came into the equation. So there really is a handicap to the props. And I'd be curious, who are some of the guys you think will be most prominent in terms of the game plan for both coaches?
Yeah, well, there's a few here, and as far as just the props go, it's the same. It's the normal guys. Mostert, obviously, Kittle, I think, is going to be much in the plan. I think Debo's going to be featured. He's a game breaker. One thing to note about Debo, and this goes for Tyreek Hill and and Hardman to a little less extent. On a lot of the jet sweeps that both of these teams use, sometimes those are forward laterals, and I think Tyreek, I think, scored on one. Yeah, and that turns into a
those
pass.
Are passes. Those are passes.
So they're passing. The receiving yards could bump up for all these guys on not real pass catches. And I think they'll use all those guys. So that would apply to Debo and Tyreek and maybe a little bit Mecole Hardman. I'm not sure if there's how many Hardman props are out there, but just keep that in mind. But it's going to, as the game flows here. I will say this: a couple of the props that we actually put in our prop corner in the gold sheet. One was on Damian Williams for the Chiefs. He's got a receiving yards prop at 29.5. I did an under on him. One, thinking he's going to be used more as a blocker in this game. Two, he played in 13 games this year. 8 of them, he ended up under 29.5 yards receiving. But I think he's going to have to do blocking in this game. And Mahomes will be looking downfield some. So that's one that I thought was an under prop that we listed in our gold sheet prop corner this week.
Well, and we'll do this. By the way, if anybody happens to be coming to Las Vegas, we're doing Super Bowl prop shows Wednesday and Thursday over at the Superbook, and Friday we're out at Sunset Station. But I will certainly pose this to our friends like Jay Cornegay and Chuck Esposito, how hard it was to make numbers on the Niners. Because this last game was ridiculous. I don't know if it was Green Bay had the flu, and many of them did, but it was such a weird game that Garoppolo went 6 of 8 for 77 yards. And you're sitting here with Kittle had a catch. Samuel had 2 catches. I think Samuel is a guy, he generally gets, but you're right though, Bruce, that little shovel pass, you think it's a jet sweep, but it is actually, if they just throw it forward, just forward to him, it's actually a pass. But I would wonder if making the San Francisco guys really was a challenge in that the last game, it was this bizarre anomaly.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly changed things. And I think what it says to me, and it was somewhat like that in the Minnesota game too. I mean, Garoppolo only threw 19 passes in that game. But I think Kyle Shanahan's come to Jesus moment was in that Super Bowl with Atlanta a few years ago when he got a little bit too cute. He is not going to get too fancy if he doesn't have to be here. If he's got something that works, he'll just keep ramming it down your throat. And that's what he did. That's what he's done in the playoffs, daring these teams to stop the Niners running the ball. And certainly it got excessive there in the Green Bay game. But that does change how you look. And I think that's what they'll try to do here against Cleveland. The difference here is I think Garoppolo can go up top. We saw him a few games this year. Certainly the New Orleans games comes to mind where he did put up some big numbers, threw 4 touchdown passes, and he's capable, I think more so than Tannehill was 2 weeks ago for Tennessee to generate that stuff through the air. But you're right. I mean, how San Francisco play calls this, how Shanahan play calls it, does impact the props because they are so heavy to the run.
Well, it's amazing. I mean, there are so many things that have tentacles and are correlated to one another. And I know he's incredibly mobile, but this San Francisco pass rush is lightning, and they are fast. And Mahomes, he's accustomed to getting away from people, and it's one of his biggest assets. But will he be able to get away with the kind of consistency he does against most teams? And he's projected to have 38.5 pass attempts, Bruce. And the total sacks for the Niners is 2.5 under $1.50. So you're getting plus $1.30 for them to get 3 sacks when he's projected to go back 38.5 times to throw it. I wonder if going that route on the Niners pass rush is not a nice plus price play.
Yeah, I've seen it. They've got 9 sacks their first 2, and they've been pressures and hurries a lot more in the playoffs thus far. Now, Mahomes a little bit more mobile. There is a thought out in Vegas here, and I've talked to some guys who believe that the 49ers have problems with mobile quarterbacks, and in no less than other teams, I say, and sometimes you can drill into these stats a little bit much, and they can fool you. And one or two scrambles by a quarterback doesn't mean that that the defense is having trouble with mobile quarterbacks. It can impact a prop here, perhaps for Mahomes if a quarterback gets away and runs for 20, 25 yards. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the Niners are having trouble with mobile quarterbacks. I would maintain Lamar Jackson had problems. I don't care that he rushed for 100 yards against the Niners. He had a lot of problems with this defense. So did Russell Wilson for the most part this year. Kyler a little bit different. But Kyler Murray and Jackson and even Wilson are all faster than Mahomes. Mahomes is clever running, but he doesn't have the speed of those guys. So, and he's not faster than the 49er pass rushers. So, yeah, I don't know that he's going to do a lot of damage on the ground. And I think over 2.5 sacks makes some sense.
For outstanding information and special offerings and promotions, we invite you and encourage you to sign up for our newsletter today simply by going to the website at betmaker.com. And I think this one, because I always love Mostert's first carry over under 3.5 yards. You think, well, that's a nothing burger. But, first, it's going to be one of the first plays of the game. That is, to me, that one is such a coin flip. But I'm looking at this one, Bruce. Patrick Mahomes' first rushing attempt is over under 4.5 yards. When he gets flushed and he's always looking downfield. He's always trying to make the big play. But when he tucks it and run, it's because there's a real window to do something. Now, he could get flushed and run to the sidelines, and he's a yard behind the line of scrimmage. It actually is a sack, or he gets, they flush him out, and he gets just by the line, and it's a yard. But I would think when he, on that premise, and he had 8 carries for 53 yards in the game against the Titans, that one I'd actually be pretty comfortable with, that when he decides to tuck it and run, that he's going to get more than 4.5 yards. That one I think I like a lot.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. And that's only on his first carry, right? So
it's a flighty, dicey kind of thing. But the thing is, when he ultimately decides he's going to run with it, because when he's flushed, right? I mean, he's the best in the league at keeping his eyes downfield. And the running is really a last resort.
Yeah. The one thing with him, they ran a couple of read options with him in the last game where he actually ran it on an option play, and maybe on that first series against Tennessee. So that would be my one concern, because there were a couple plays they have in their bag of tricks there that actually have him running a traditional option. I don't know that they'll risk that here. I would think for most quarterbacks, the first rushing, because it's a sack until you get plus yardage, and then right. And then it's a run, and that counts against the passing.
But I don't believe the sack counts as a rushing attempt.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Right.
But if you run out of there and you get back to the line of scrimmage or a yard beyond, then it's a rushing attempt.
That's a rushing. And you know what? Just in that vein, on that very same premise, whether it's right or it's wrong, but he did tuck it and run 8 times. In a game that they won.
Yeah.
Now if they're behind and they're throwing a lot more, he may do this a lot more. It may be a much safer one, because there is a dicier aspect to that first attempt. But over the course of 60 minutes, wouldn't you play? Here, I won't even give you the number. I won't tell you what the number is. You may know it. But what would you think over 60 minutes Patrick Mahomes' longest rush would be? I mean, actually, what would it be? Not what the number is. What do you think his longest rush will be at some point during the game?
Oh, I think he'll have a rush over 15 yards once in the game.
There you go. Okay. To me, that's another one I'm going to play. His longest rush is 11.5.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be hard pressed to not envision him, and if they are behind, by the way, I mean, that number probably, he may get 2 or 3 of those, because they're going to be playing, kind of a 2-deep zone. That's what happens when you've got lightning bolt receivers like that. And the safeties and everybody's on their heels because they stretch the field. Once a guy like Mahomes breaks contain, a linebacker has no shot at tackling him immediately.
Pretty much. The Niners are pretty fast, though, but you're right. And I think that applies to a lot of quarterbacks who are mobile. And it would be interesting if they put these sorts of props up on every game during the season. What be? And
oh, boy.
I don't want to give them an idea, but maybe that's coming.
Oh, I wish they would, actually.
Well, English soccer, you should see that every game you got. This is the table menu you got almost every game in soccer overseas, too. So maybe it's coming. We'll see.
I don't know how I could go anywhere near anything Jimmy Garoppolo. I have no idea one game to the next. The one thing that is kind of true about him, he will make one throw a game. You go, oh, right? I mean, does he not have a throw that has pick six written over it every game? One, at least one.
He seems to, and I'd be a little cautious of that on the San Francisco side. I will give you one Niner prop here that we liked, and we put this at the top of our thing, and then we're reacting to what's going on. First quarter, San Francisco, it's pick 'em, maybe KC minus a half. So if you can get that half for San Francisco, that's really good. But the Niners have jumped out really quick in these games, and the Chiefs have not. The Chiefs have been outscored 31-7 in the first quarter. The last two versus Houston and Tennessee, they were down 10-0, 24-0 before getting untracked in these first two games. They are generally a slower starting team, and San Francisco usually jumps right out of the blocks here. So I think a first quarter on the Niners is one of the alternate team props there that I think is kind of interesting.
It's great where you can dissect and dive into these games. It all depends on the flow of the game. If somehow Kansas City got a lead, a gift from the gods would probably be a guy like Emmanuel Sanders over 41.5 receiving yards. But that is all based on whether they're ahead or behind. If they're ahead, they're not going to look cross-eyed at him. If they're behind, he's going to get 90 yards. Yeah,
and how the game flows will determine the way all these props. It usually goes like that. But I think there are some interesting things too on the alternative spreads here. I'm not sure you're getting great value in any of these, but a lot of these games, even the games that are close point spreads, Super Bowls, we've had some decent ones in recent years, but there have been a lot of blowouts in Super Bowls, and championship games in general have had blowouts. And look at college. The last two, Clemson, Alabama, Clemson, LSU, they turned into one-sided games, both of them. And there's a history in championship games where these things tend to get out of hand. Now, I know, you don't never kind of see it in a game that looks pick 'em, but if you think one side or the other is going to win, have a little fun with an alternative spread at a bigger number. One of these teams isn't going to win by one or two, I don't think, even though the point spread is there. It's going to be a little more than that. It might be a lot more. We'll see.
This is an interesting question, and I'm trying to think of the answers. I'm going to ask it to you. Of the two, who could you envision not getting blown out? I mean, if there were a blowout, who is more likely to be the team blowing the team out?
I think because of the way San Francisco has crumpled some of these teams this year.
Bingo.
I would think they're less likely to get blown out. So I would.
That was my belief.
Yeah, that's what even they've had some close games, and KC has never lost a game by more than 7 with Mahomes at quarterback. But still, listen, we know the way championship games go, and I've seen some really good. Denver with Peyton Manning that year against Seattle, that was the most prolific offense in NFL history that year, and they didn't get on the board until the fourth quarter in that game. So stuff happens,
Hey, last year the Rams were a video game until the Super Bowl.
Yes, that's right. Who thought that would have been 13-3? And by the way, there an interesting prop. I talked to a guy this week who actually had a prop of there would be no touchdown scored in that game at a bomber price. And deep into the fourth quarter, that was a ticket looked like it was getting cashed. So, yeah, nobody would have thought that was going to be 13-3 last year, and that's what we got.
All right. I mean, we'll revisit this, during the week because there are 400 of them.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good starting point to at least say to people, as you're handicapping the game, and take your opinion of why you made, right? It's the foundation. Why did you handicap the game this way? Why you've played the over, or you've played the under, or you think you like San Fran, or you like Kansas City. So the rationale why you like them then go inside that, and there are opportunities for you there. And then there are some sneaky, quirky opportunities that, yes, that if that were to happen, this likely will happen. And that's not one thing. It could be 6 things are likely to happen because this is how I think the game's going to be played.
Yeah, that's how I would normally do it here. When I do these, you have in your mind how you think the game is going to go, and you try to build any of your props you have based upon that, or else you're really just all over the board. One other note, though, there, and you and I both know this, and so do the sportsbook managers, that there is a proclivity for the customer base to bet overs on these things, and you look at it over.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the built-in edge the house really has on these props, and where they usually win, because there's a real heavy to the over on most all these props, especially the player stat props. So there's some value sometimes in the under. So keep that in mind.
And when you say that, again, the value word, but it's true.
Yeah.
Because it's the same rationale for sharp money on season win totals. Teams bet the under, and in a game of this nature, if Travis Kelce rolls an ankle on the first play of the game, all of a sudden every Travis Kelce prop is toast.
Yeah.
But every Sammy Watkins prop goes nuts because they're going to be focused on Tyreek Hill. So one injury sets 5 things alight.
Yes, it does. It's a domino effect on these things for sure. And as the course of the game, that's the one thing you can't really predict beforehand. I mean, we can try to predict it, but I mean, how these games go in the flow of the game determines so much of how these props go. So if you have any clue on that, that sort of gives you a little bit better guide. But that's why it's gambling.
All right, my friend, we're going to have a lot of fun with this throughout the course of the week. We got you covered. Just really scratching the surface on the props. I think we dished out a few there that are certainly worth considering. For Bruce Marshall, I'm Brian Blessing. We're hanging out in Las Vegas, and we're eagerly anticipating them kicking this thing off. Let's play this doggone game already.
Betmaker, let's make some money tonight.
Well, that's the Betmaker Show for now. We publish multiple times each week. We'd like to thank you for listening, and if you liked what you heard, please take a moment to leave a rating and review, or subscribe to our show feed, or share our show with a friend or two and help us grow the show. We very much appreciate it. Visit us on the web at betmaker.com. And reminder to sign up for the newsletter. Thanks to our engineer, Darren Vandermolen, and producer, Mike Gallivan. The Betmaker Show is a production of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated. Betmaker is a registered trademark. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this content without the express written consent of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated is strictly prohibited.
The handicapping and sports odds information contained on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Please confirm the wagering regulations in your jurisdiction, as they vary from state to state, province to province, and country to country. Using this information to contravene any law or statute is prohibited. The podcast is not associated with, nor is it endorsed by any professional or collegiate league, association, or team. This podcast does not target and is not intended for an audience under the age of 18. If you think that you have a gambling addiction, stop this podcast now and please seek help.
Gambling and betting on sports is a form of entertainment and should be about having a good time. But when done excessively, it may negatively affect other areas of a person's life, such as their physical and mental health, school or work performance, finances, and or interpersonal relationships. At Betmaker.com and the Betmaker Show, we're concerned about the addiction that gambling may cause, and for this reason, we encourage everyone to practice responsible gambling, an approach to gambling that helps you ensure that it remains an enjoyable activity. Here are the main principles of responsible gambling. Don't think of gambling as a way to make money. Always gamble with money that you can afford to lose. Set limits and stick to them. Never chase losses. Don't gamble when you're depressed or upset, and create a healthy balance. Always be aware of how much time you spend gambling or thinking about gambling. And do not allow gambling to cause you to miss out on time with family and friends or time spent on other activities you enjoy. By following these guidelines, gambling can be a good time and great entertainment. If you feel at any time that your gambling is taking away from important areas of your life, is causing you stress or depression, or is leading to financial losses that are beyond your control, please reach out for help. Learn more at responsiblegambling.org.